how do I do this? How do I switch from wedding planner only to CEO growing the business? And so that's where I'm at now. Like I still feel like a wedding planner, but I feel more like a CEO now, which is phenomenal and just in time for baby number 2.
Hey there, CEOs. Welcome to the Wedding Pro CEO podcast. I'm your host, Brandee Gaar, and my mission, as always, is to help you, the wedding industry entrepreneur, to build a profitable wedding business that you've always dreamed of. On today's show, I am so excited to get to introduce you to Sammy Kesner of Jackson and June Events. Sammy is a planner in Athens, Georgia, and she started her business when her husband had been transferred out of state to Florida. She knew no one, and she absolutely had to start her business from the ground up. Once she got her business up and thriving here in Florida, he was transferred back to Georgia, and she had to transfer her business there, and now she has a thriving business. What I love about Sammy's story is that she's actually also 5 weeks from getting ready to have her next baby. And she talks about when she had her first baby, she was not able to take a maternity leave at all. And she actually worked an event just a few weeks after giving birth. But this time she is ready. She is stepping into that CEO role. She has plans to take a 2-month maternity leave. Her business is set to run completely without her. And I'm so incredibly honored and proud to have been a small part in her journey of getting to this stage of her business. I cannot wait for you to hear all about Sammy's journey, how she's grown her business, and her plans for 2024 when she's back from maternity leave. Sammy, I am so excited that you agreed to join me on this show. I've loved getting to know you and your business over the last several months. And I was like, more people need to hear about your business journey and about how you're moving and shaking. So thanks for being here.
Yes, I'm so excited as well. It's been so fun being a part of your community over the last few months. And I mean, seriously, I've seen some changes in the business. So excited to be here too.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, so I would love for you to tell everybody that's listening a little bit more about how you got started in the wedding industry. I always find it fascinating how people wandered into this crazy industry.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us a little bit about how you got here and how you started your business?
Yep. I actually, when I graduated college, I have a degree in public health, which is very irrelevant to our job, but that brought me to Emory Healthcare right out of college. And I worked in their administrative office doing some professional development programs for their administrative side. In a hospital,
Okay.
you see like suits and scrubs. I was helping professionally develop the suits. And with that came a lot of events. So I planned all of the corporate events and graduations for them and recruiting events, things like that. Got into the corporate side of things and loved it. That was my favorite part of the job. Then I planned my own wedding while I was working at Emory, and I was like, oh, I really love this. And weddings are a lot more creative than some of the corporate
Mhm.
events I was getting to do because it was the same blue tablecloths over and over. I like the creativity of the wedding side a little bit more. And when we planned our wedding, I just loved it and talked to so many friends who hated it. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm onto something. So I started interning with a wedding planner in the area and just fell even more in love with it. Helped her for about a year, learned so much from her, really just got in there and asked all the questions. And I was like, okay, I think this is what I want to do. Then my husband got relocated to Florida, to Tampa, Florida for his job. And when we got down there, I didn't have a job. So I was like, let's do it. And I launched
Yes.
Jackson and June Events, started it as a blog because I didn't really have a portfolio of my own to showcase. I
Mm,
mean, I had event experience, but it was under somebody else. And then through the corporate side,
right.
I didn't have a portfolio. So I was just like, I'll just start writing articles on what I do know about events and did that for about 6 months, got some really good traction, and then launched the planning side of it and said, okay, if you need a coordinator, I'm here, and got a few hits, and it has grown exponentially since then. That's the root of how I got started.
I love that actually worked out so well because if your husband wouldn't have gotten relocated, you
Yes.
probably would have been competition to the person that you're interning with, which could have gotten awkward. So that actually worked out really well.
Yeah, and I would not have quit my job at Emory because it was a really good,
Okay.
stable job, and I wouldn't have made the jump. So that kind of pushed me. It was
Yeah.
like, all right, I don't have a job, so I'm just gonna make myself a job. Yeah, so it definitely was one of those things that it was like I had the idea, and then everything kept pushing me towards the idea.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so good. I love how life can do that to us. And so
Hmm.
I have many questions. One, what year was that you moved to Tampa?
It was 2018, so it was in February of 2018, literally like 2 months after we got married.
Okay. And then how did you come up with the name Jackson in June?
Yes, it's a random story, but a little bit of sentiment behind it. So I knew I didn't want it to be my name just because from the very beginning, I knew I wanted a team and I didn't want to be doing
Okay.
all the weddings myself. Like that was in my brain from the start. And so as I was building the blog and getting things started, my grandfather, who I was very close with, he passed away unexpectedly, and he always pushed all of us to do what we, follow our dreams and do our passions and things like that. So I wanted something to honor him, but I also wanted something that showed like my love for customizing and personalizing weddings. So at my
Okay.
wedding, my husband and I, when we did our recessional, we played the song Jackson by Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash as a surprise for my grandparents because that was their song and a song that we had bonded
Mm.
over through childhood. So we played that as like a surprise for them. And honestly, when I was thinking of a name, I was like, Jackson, I wanted to do something with that song in honor for him. And then it just sounded cute, like Jackson and June
Yeah.
together because of June Carter Cash. And so that's how it was born. It, like I said, it was a little bit random, a little bit sentiment, a little bit on purpose.
I love that. I'm a sucker for origin stories and how people came up with their company name because there's so much thought that goes into choosing your company name. So I'm always so intrigued by like, okay, where did you come up with this? Do
Yeah.
people often think that your name is June?
Yes, or they think my kids are Jackson and June, which they're
Yes.
not, but yeah, there's a lot of like, who are you?" But that's okay. It's worked really well in my opinion because then we shorten it to J and J,
Yeah.
so we call our
Mhm.
couples like J and J couples. It's worked really well.
Yeah, that's so cute. Okay, I love that. And then you said right from the beginning, I knew I wanted a team because I didn't want to do all the weddings myself, which I
Mhm.
find fascinating because I think that's so rare in our industry. It's like most of the time you get into the industry and you're like, I want to plan weddings or I want to DJ weddings. I want to be a photographer, but you don't think
Yeah.
longer term. So what do you think made you think about that right from the beginning?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually remember sitting in Tampa, Florida, like at a coffee shop, just brainstorming about what I wanted the business to look like. And my dad is an entrepreneur. He has always owned his own businesses, and I saw the really hard work that went into that. And my grandpa also was an entrepreneur, so saw all of that hard work. But I also saw the amount of hours that went into their businesses. And I also knew from the very beginning that I wanted children and I wanted a life outside of the businesses. So that's where that came in. I was like, all right, I know I want to do this and I know that I have a passion for it, but I don't want my life to be run by the business.
Mm.
I want to run the business. And I have probably heard someone on a podcast say something about that at some point as well. Because I was binging all the business podcasts at that point, making sure that, I'm setting up a business that's not going to totally overtake our life where I felt like I had to choose between family and business
Mhm.
because I want them both.
Mhm.
And that's where that thought came from.
Ah, that's so good. Yeah. And you had an example of seeing an entrepreneur, it sounds like several entrepreneurs successful
Hmm.
in your life. And I think so often we come from families that have parents that have 9 to 5 jobs and you're figuring it all out on your own. I know for me, my parents were entrepreneurs. And so when
Hmm.
I started my business, I knew I always wanted a team, but I don't think I built it correctly right from the beginning. I talk about that a lot. Like I built it in a way that still involved me in every facet of the business. And it was so
Yeah.
overwhelming. I remember getting to that breaking point. So I find it interesting that you were like, no, I knew from the beginning I wanted a life and I I needed to have a team. So I love that you named it purposefully to be able to have a team. So did you hire a team right away? Tell us a little bit about building the company.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, there was a time where I was completely just married to this business, and it was very, like, it all me, wearing all the hats. So, for anybody listening, it was
Yeah.
not like I started out and it was like, "Oh, this is beautifully laid out." It wasn't that, but yeah, it was definitely the goal. That's what I had in mind, but getting started, no, I did not hire right away. Basically, what I did was after I made the pivot from the blog to actually offering services, I was just
Mhm.
working any wedding that anyone would hire me for. I was like, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. Roped my poor husband into it. He didn't know he was going to be a wedding assistant when I started this, but he definitely was in the beginning because I realized it's not a one person job on actual wedding day. So really that first year I was just in the trenches, like getting all the work I could, doing what I could, working really hard all hours of the night. At this point we did not have children, so it was a lot easier to do that.
Yeah.
We were in Florida and we didn't have any friends or family down there, so I had a lot of spare time. I was just working, 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 hustling, getting everything together and trying to get business. And that worked. It definitely paid off. I was booking,
Mhm.
and then we got relocated back to Georgia, which is where we're from and where all of our family is from, which was a great thing. I loved Tampa, but wanted to come home. And so I was going back and forth doing weddings from
Oh
Tampa
gosh.
to Georgia for a while, which was really exhausting, but finally made the switch to Georgia and planted my feet in the Athens market, which was great because we actually got
Okay.
married in Athens. So I knew some people, so I got here and started booking here. So it just like domino effect. And I knew more people here. So more people were, hey, I have a friend who's getting married. Do you want to do it? Because there was that level of trust, even though I
Yes.
didn't have this like really seasoned business yet. Then I found out I was pregnant with our first daughter. And I was like, oh, I'm going to need some help. I think this was in like, gosh, probably January of 2020, right before the world shut down. And so I
Yep.
started interviewing and hired my first hire, Kellen, who is still with me today. She's now my director of operations. Love her to death. So I hired her and then realized that I might need two when COVID started arising and we had to reschedule because we had our spring season was pretty much booked
Mhm.
and then COVID hit. So then we had to move everything to the fall and I was due in August. So it was like,
Oh my word,
oh,
Sammy.
yeah. So I was like, I'm going to need more. I'm going to need more help. So I reached back
Yeah.
out to a couple of people that I had interviewed that I really loved. And I got Lily, who is also still with me. They were amazing. They trained through spring and summer as much as we could train with COVID going on. I
Yeah.
got them ready. And then in August, they just feet first, like dove in and or head first, really helped me through COVID reschedules because everything had moved. And then I was 3 weeks early with my daughter. And so that first like wedding weekend, we had a double wedding. I went into labor. They
Oh
were
my
just
word.
like the best. We had to pull in some assistance from outside and family and things like that. Just huddled together and helped me through it. And the business definitely would have crumbled if I hadn't have hired them. And I told them that all the time. I'm like, you guys saved my business, saved me. So that was definitely a pivotal time. And then from there, I've just really focused on the value of having people to support the team and to support
Mhm.
our couples and to support me. So we've grown since then. Now we've got Lily and Kellen are two lead planners. And then we've got Sydney and Bailey and Aaron, who are associate coordinators. And then we have a bunch of day of assistants. It's incredible. I love having a team. It's my favorite part.
I find this so interesting because one, you were saying that you hired right before the pandemic. And while you
Yep.
might not have known in January what was about to happen, for sure by March, you knew what was about to happen. And instead of
Oh,
hearing
yeah.
you say, and so I freaked out and let them go or let her go, you were like, no, I knew I needed her more than ever, even though
Mhm.
I'm guessing you were a little fearful of money, finances, how you guys were going to pay people.
Oh, yeah, I was panicking, honestly, but I remember being like, "Okay." It was like a pivotal moment. It was like, "Okay, I can either shut this thing down or I
Yep.
can sacrifice a little bit and keep going." And being totally transparent, there were times during that season when I didn't pay myself and I paid them
Hmm.
instead because I needed them to keep going, and ultimately, it definitely worked out in the long run. It was definitely one of those times where it's like, all right, I can pedal to the metal or totally hit the brakes.
Yep. I feel like that happens for so many wedding pros. 1000%. I remember going through that exact same stage where we just had our third daughter, and I was like, I just felt like I was in a blur of life. Like where our business was
Mhm.
booming and I just had her, and I was like, I don't know how to manage a business and a team and children, and it was too much. And I was just like, I looked at my husband, I remember so vividly, and said the exact same thing you just said, which was like, I either need to completely put the brakes and we need to stop with this business, or I need help and we're going to go full in. I love hearing you say that you really kind of came to that crossroads and you decided to go all in, which was now hiring a second person. It was a very scary time. It sounds like it really blossomed your business and really helped you to take off even more.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because it was like once I got those 2 initial hires, it felt like it was almost addicting. I was like, "Okay, I love this. I love having a team. I love having the support, so let's add more."
It's so funny. I tell people all the time when they first come into the accelerator, I'm always like, okay, listen, once you make that first hire, all of a sudden it's like, well, now I need another one. And now I need another one because
Oh,
you
yeah.
realize how one person can triple your output, which is funny because it's
Oh,
like, it's just
yeah.
one additional human, but you just get so much time back and you've got so
Mhm.
much more energy and excitement in your business. So hiring those two must have been huge. You had your baby in still August or July? Because you were early.
Yep, August
Okay.
12th, I was due at the end of August, but August 12th, 2020.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. Okay, going into fall season. I cannot even imagine. And so, did you work through that season? Did you get to take a big maternity leave? Like, how did that work?
No, no maternity leave for that first go around. I actually this is so funny. I was, like, sending emails from the hospital, which is insane. I will not be doing that this go
Mhm.
around. And then I actually worked a wedding 3 weeks after I had her, which is just
Oh my
insane.
God.
Yeah, it was a very small COVID wedding, so it wasn't over the top, but still, I look back and I'm like, "That is ridiculous. Why did I do that to myself?" I definitely regret putting that pressure on myself, but it was my first baby, and going into it,
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, I'll be fine. I'm tough. No big deal. I got it." And then you have the baby and you're like, "Oh, this is not so
Yeah.
easy." So a lot of it was definitely not knowing, but always learning and doing things differently the second time.
100%. And if you guys don't know, Sammy is very pregnant as of the recording of
Yes.
this episode. You're doing like 5 weeks, right?
Yes. Yes, I'm 35 weeks literally today. So, yeah, soon.
Yeah, and you were 3 weeks early with the last one, so we'll see if you're still
Mhm.
pregnant when this airs, but it's super exciting, and so far we've talked about and it's so funny, Sammy, how you've described these different stages of your business, but, like, when you were in Tampa and when you first moved back to Athens, you were really in that hustler stage, and you were talking about how you were like, "I just took every piece of business, I stayed up, I worked all night, I recruited my husband," like, all the things you do in that initial hustler stage of business where it's like,
Mhm.
you're just trying to get money in the door, right? And you don't know who
Yeah,
your ideal customer is or what your niche is necessarily or what makes you unique. You're just trying to get a portfolio built, right? In that
exactly.
hustler
Yeah.
stage of business. And so you described that very, I love it because I was like, yeah, this is like textbook, right? Of what hustler stage of business is. And then here, when
Mhm.
you're having your first baby, you're really in that blooming onion stage. Like you're really starting to build a team and you're starting to figure out, okay, I need more. I don't necessarily need to be in the hustler stage anymore. I can start to outsource. But in that stage of business, from once you had the baby until the beginning of this year. I'd love to know what that felt like. Now you have a team and you think it's going to be all sparkling roses, but it's hard. I feel like the blooming onion stage is the hardest stage of business. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I think the hardest part, and honestly, a lot of what made me want to join your community, because I've heard you talk about this and people in your community talk about this, is during that bloom and onion stage where we had traction, like our calendars were full. We have two
Mhm.
team members, but I was still very much wedding planner. Like I was still taking on the majority of the clients because my two planners, while they were amazing and they took a lot of the load off, they still had full-time jobs
Mhm.
working when they could, so they couldn't take on as big of a client load as I could. So I was like, I'm still taking on all the clients I could, and so I found myself doing nothing but client work, like, all the time. And so I felt like I got to a point where I was no longer working on the business, I was just working in the business, like, just
Mhm.
emails and timelines and layouts and all the things all the time, which of course I love those things, but I didn't
Sure.
have time to think. I didn't have time to be
Mhm.
creative for my business. So I felt like I wasn't growing. I needed to, being
Mhm.
fully transparent. You're making a little bit of money, but it's not enough to say, like, I'm contributing to my family. I need some brain space to be able to serve the clients, but also work on the business to make it grow so we can bring in more
Mhm.
revenue so I can pay my people and pay myself. So that was really hard because I was like, how do you get your hands out of the weeds? And
Mhm.
so that's again what attracted me to a community like yours and finding out, like, how do I do this? How do I switch from wedding planner only to CEO, growing the business? And so that's where I'm at now. Like I still feel like a wedding planner, but I feel more like a CEO now, which is phenomenal and just in time for baby number 2.
Yes, yes, I know. I love that with this baby, you feel like you've got a lot more control over your time.
Mhm.
Maternity leave, you're taking a maternity leave with this baby, right?
Correct. I actually am.
I love it. And it's still you're having her in August as well, which I think
Yes.
that's good
Yes.
timing, Sammy. But both babies
So
in
funny.
August and you're still going in, yeah, you're still going into fall season and your company's probably even more busy than it was 2 years ago. So how are you
Yes.
navigating a maternity leave this time and what's different, do you feel like?
Yeah, that's such a relevant question because that's what we've been prepping for all summer. And the timing of it is just hilarious that they're both in August. So
Yeah.
funny. This time,
Yeah.
very different because I've got more team members. I have my seasoned team members who know the business, who know me. I've been prepping them like, okay, I am taking 2 months off. And basically what we did right when I told them that I was expecting is we made a list of all of my current responsibilities and then what I needed coverage for. Put that out there to the team, and everybody was like, all hands on deck. It was so nice. They're great. But then Kellen, my lead planner, who's been with me since the beginning, she just had babies. She had twin girls in January of this
Oh my
year.
gosh.
Yes, right as I was starting to really prep maternity leave and put pen to paper to it, and honestly panicking a little bit. I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? She calls
Yeah.
me and she's like, "Hey, I don't think I'm going back to my 9 to 5. So, is there capacity? Is there room for me to take on more with Jackson in June so I can work with you and stay home with the babies?" And I remember just that phone call, like holding back tears, being like, "Yes, there is. Yes, please." Definitely just worked out. So now she has onboarded as my director of operations. And so she is basically going to be me while I'm out on maternity
I
leave.
love it.
And we're working at this together. It's definitely not because I was
Yeah.
scared initially of the financial piece, having
Mhm.
to pay her more, but we're working at this together. And I feel I'm in that spot where I'm like, again, a pivotal moment. Like, I can either take maternity leave and let her handle things, or I can do like I did last time and work to death and be miserable. So, we're putting our heads together and we've built this position so that it works for both of us. And there are still things that, like, I have only my hand in, but she has her hand in mostly everything now. So, it's been basically since April, I think. So, April through now, July, where
Yeah.
she's been just shadowing me. I've been teaching her things so that she is super prepared when I go out. That is how I'm taking maternity leave, and having her support the team, and the rest of the team is all on board and all excited about it too, to have a second person to turn to if they
Mhm.
need. So thankful that I have her.
Yeah, it's been so fun to kind of watch you develop this organized team, which is so different from a lot of times people say, "Oh, yeah, I have a team," but it's really a lot of task managers, right? It's wedding planners, but that's all they do is they plan weddings. And really
Hmm.
having an organized team where everyone knows their role, right? It's like they know exactly what their job is in building the business up. And I feel like that's such a difference than just having a bunch of team members underneath you, because now you
Yeah.
can step back from the business. And when you come back from maternity leave, I'm excited too to see how your business looks different, because now you know the team can run the business without you. And so
Yes.
really seeing how that will allow you the creative freedom to look at possible additional revenue streams to come into the business, or even just growing it, but not necessarily having to step back into that role. Have you thought a little bit about that yet?
Yes, and it is super exciting. It's funny, Kellen and I actually chatted about this earlier last week, I think, but she is learning the ropes for sales, which is the last thing that I still feel like I have my hands fully in, but
Yeah.
I think she's going to just do great. And we talked about if things go well and she really likes it, maybe me not taking that back on, or maybe us tag teaming that a little bit more. And I'm like, absolutely, let's do it. That's definitely going to be something that might change. And then as far as the other operations pieces that she is now owning, like she's going to keep owning that. And she's going to work hand in hand with our social media manager to keep all of that going, with me just like checking in and saying hi every now and then. There's definitely going to be some things that aren't going to go fully back to normal. And I'm excited about it because I have some more ideas for things that we can add on to the business, and again, give myself the brain space to think about those types of strategic things and adding new revenue streams. So it's super exciting.
Yeah, I love that in this CEO stage of business, which you're really starting to step into. It's interesting because your whole business sounds like it's kind of been this way, but it's almost like a forced step in that direction, right? Because you're having this baby and it's like, okay, well, I have to try to let my business run without me. And it's going to be like this really cool trial run where you're here, but you're not, and you can really see what your team can do without you.
Yeah.
But what I love about it is in this CEO stage of business, when you're able to let your team run what you've already got, now you can really start dreaming and setting goals and setting real tangible plans to that next revenue stream that you'll be thinking about doing, whether that's corporate events or opening another market or starting to coach or speak. But there's so many options that you have, but now you'll have the white space and the capacity to start really implementing one of those in 2024,
Yeah.
which I'm so excited for you, Sammy. This is going to
Me
be
too.
a whole different business this time next year, which is exciting.
I agree. I agree. And it's just, and I think that keeps, as a business owner, keeps us on our toes too, and making sure we're not getting complacent with our businesses as well. It's like, all right, because in the CEO mindset, we're like, okay, let's go on to the next thing. I'm definitely ready for that.
Yes, I love it. I want to just touch on your business has just grown every single year. It's just grown so much. And obviously, you had, like we talked about, you had two entrepreneurs in your family that you really were able to go to and look up to and had as a great example. But I know you joined the Accelerator this year, 2023. And so tell me why you decided to join the Accelerator, and then how you feel like it's really helped to impact you and be ready for this season of business.
Yeah, yeah. So I previously worked with a business coach last year for it was about a full year, and he was great. He helped me so much with the nuts and bolts of my business and the finances and getting me set up with spreadsheets and all of that, and it was really great. But then once we had all of those things in place, I was like, okay, I really need to learn from someone who knows this industry, because I felt like I had a really
Yeah.
good pulse on the nuts and bolts of the business. And that's when you kept popping up on my Instagram.
Funny enough.
I researched you and the community, and I was like, I think this is exactly what I need, because I feel really confident in the inner workings of the business, but I'm lacking that community of people who know the industry and know where I should go next. And so that's what
Mm.
made me take the leap to get in with the Accelerator program. And it's been so great. Like, I look forward to the CEO sprints on Mondays and the calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I look forward to it so much because, like I said, I feel like I have a good hand in the inner workings, but sometimes I'm like, I need somebody to talk about this with, or someone to look at this and coach me along the way. So that's what made me take the initial leap.
Yeah. What I love so much about our group in the Accelerator is, yes, there's a full 7 module course with hours and hours of short videos that you can go in and watch a little bit at a time and then go back to running your business. But I think the magic is in the community and in our calls and in the Facebook group, where people that are exactly where you are, or maybe even just one step ahead of you, are there to bounce ideas off of, to give advice, to say, here's how I did this, or here's what's working for me. And sometimes just to say, yeah, this month is slow or this month is great. It's just a really encouraging group, because I think, I don't know if you felt this, Sammy, but the higher you get in your company, the closer you get to really walking in those CEO shoes,
Mm.
I feel like the more lonely it can be.
Yeah.
And so having a community of CEOs to really walk alongside you is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also feel, and I felt this too, like, I know other wedding planners in the area, but you never
Yeah.
want to, even if you're not a competitor, you never want to feel like you're
Mm,
stepping on someone's toes, or, feeling weird about reaching out. But with a community like this, like, we're all spread out. And so we're not
yeah.
in a competitive market. So we can definitely bounce ideas off of each other and
Mhm.
get a pulse on the industry. Like, I know, like you just mentioned, I ask all the time, I'm like, okay, are y'all feeling like it's really slow this month, or is it
Yeah.
going fast? Like, is it just me? And it adds a lot of comfort and confidence in how we're running the day to day.
Yeah, it's so good. And even as you've been developing Kellen's role and you're just building your team, I love getting to see everybody else describe too. Like, this is how I've written my role,
Yeah.
because to be honest, I'm really big on, like, there's just not one right way to do
Yeah.
this, and I feel like a lot of what I enjoy doing is almost just facilitating the conversation, because there's so many different ways to skin a cat. And I love that you and Kellen have really developed her role together.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, I think, has come with being able to know, one, it's okay to do that.
Yep.
And two, getting to hear the other CEOs in the group say, this is how my director of operations is, or these are the things I have my director of operations handle. And so I've really loved getting to watch you develop that
Mhm.
throughout the 6 months that you've been inside the Accelerator.
Yeah. And it's helped so much just having a community to lean on and to drop a question in the Facebook group every now and then. You always get a response. So that's nice.
That is nice. So if anybody was on the fence and was thinking, either I'm so slammed right now, like, I have too many weddings, I don't know how I could possibly make time to do this, or they're just like, I don't know, like, I don't know if this is the right next step for me, what would you say to somebody that was kind of like, I'm not sure if I should join?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely something you need to do if you are in that stage where you're wanting to pivot your role in your business and you've never built a business before. That's where I was. I'm doing this thing, I feel confident, but at the same time, I've never done this before. This is my first business, and it's really nice to have voices of reason and just someone, even just to validate what you're feeling or what you're
Yeah.
thinking, and someone who knows the industry, because that's the other thing, is knowing what's working and what's not and keeping current with the industry. Just having that to guide you and lead you to the next small step or even the next
Yeah.
large step. I highly recommend, and I'm excited to keep working with the group and with you and to see where that leads us.
I know. I cannot wait. I'm excited for you to come back from maternity leave and see what 2024 holds for you, Sammy. So, if anybody wanted to follow along on your journey, take a peek at Jackson and June events, where can they follow along?
Yes. So, Instagram is our biggest social media platform. We're at Jackson and June events, and that's all spelled out. That's where all the wedding magic happens. If you want to follow me personally, my personal Instagram is Sammy Kesner. It's mostly baby spams. There's not a whole lot going on there besides the babes. But yeah, Jackson and June events, that's where you can find us. We're on TikTok. My social media manager runs that. We are there, but Instagram is the biggest one.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Sammy, thank you so much for being here. We cannot wait to see all the baby spam. I want to see all the pictures of your new baby girl. We cannot wait. And thank you so much. This was great.
Yes, thank you for having me, Brandee.